Now, as you all know, Rachel Zegler giving smug interviews and also talking about how she hates the source material. We've all seen that for Snow White. And now we see that, this particular Disney's first princess is now the face of one of the most awkward pop culture moments in recent memory. And right there at the center of it all, as you all know, is Rachel Zegler. Now, whether she likes it or not, Rachel Zegler has become the poster girl for Hollywood's latest identity crisis. It's like this. People were already skeptical about another live action remake, but the second that Rachel Zegler actually opened her mouth about how outdated the original Snow White was, boom, game over. She took one of the most iconic fairy tales ever and basically said, "Yeah, we're doing the opposite of that." And basically, people just noticed that big time. Now, this particular version featuring Rachel Zegler of Snow White didn't just tweak the story, it basically tossed the whole thing. We've already seen that with the reaction with the box office numbers. Now, she wasn't just playing a different kind of princess, she was actively trying to go ahead and cancel the original. That rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way, especially the people who grew up loving Snow White for what it was: simple, charming, and unpretentious. Okay? Also, unpretentious is usually not in my vocabulary, but I heard it from somewhere. Now, you think that Disney would have learned by now, but here we are. Rachel Zegler and Snow White somehow became a cultural punching bag before it was even released, okay? And that's 9 months before the release of the whole with the pre-release PR damage from Rachel Zegler, saying that the prince is a stalker, the story is dead, and that, you know what, this isn't a love story anymore. What? It's freaking Snow White. You don't have to marry the prince in the first 5 minutes, but maybe don't spit on the source material either. Now, there's a huge difference between updating a classic and completely nuking it. Okay, and we've actually been witnessing that all along. But despite all that attention, Snow White, which is starring Richard Zegler, has limped its way to just $142 million worldwide. And if that wasn't embarrassing enough, guess what? It almost beat. Guess what? Almost beat it. The Chosen. That's right. The three bundled episodes of a streaming show just about match Snow White at the box office. Imagine spending over $400 million on production and marketing only to get clowned by a church-funded series. That's not just a flop. That's insane cope for everyone involved, okay? Now, let's also not pretend that, this drop off was a surprise. By the second weekend, Richard Zegler's Snow White had already lost 66% of his box office haul, going upwards towards 75%. That's kind of a free fall that makes studio executives consider early retirement. But one week you're just simply getting Disney press tours and stuff and glowing red for corporate photos, and the next you're watching the numbers drop like a rock while the fans post memes of Rachel Zegler getting booed off stage by the ghost of Walt Disney. Meanwhile, over on the Marvel side, the Marvels is pulling nearly identical numbers with $65 million domestically and stuff in its second weekend, as you all remembered. But here's the crazy part: inflation. When you adjust for rising ticket prices and stuff, it looks like the Marvels might have had more people actually show up to see it than Rachel Zegler's Snow White flop. And that's just plain sad right there. But simply imagine putting your eggs in the "we're going to change the narrative" basket and getting absolutely outpaced by a particular movie that everyone called the death rattle of the MCU. Okay? That right there is definitely sad, by the way. And you know what? Snow White, the movie Disney built its legacy on, gets remade into a soulless, lecture filled drama that simply alienates its fans and loses to a movie with, space cats and singing planets. But when your entire marketing strategy is we're not doing a love story and we don't like the original, don't be shocked when people say, "Cool, we're not watching it." I mean, they've already said it and showed it. Rachel Zegler took Snow White and made it into a project that sounded more like a college, thesis than a movie night. Okay, and Rachel Zegler's Snow White may have cost over $350 million to make. That's not a rumor. That's actually coming from multiple reports factoring in strikes, delays, reshoots, and marketing. Now add another $100 million in promo costs, and you're staring down the barrel of a $450 million black hole. Okay, and how much does it need to break even? Around 800 million, if not a billion, which is not happening. You see, that's not. It's never going to be close. Okay, that's a nightmare scenario for what's supposed to be a big studio that used to print money off the fairy tale IPs. Now, for context, the Marvels cost about a ton too, but probably less than Rachel Zegler's Snow White, and that's actually saying something. Now, how do you spend more on a fairy tale reboot than a space opera with CGI superpowers and alien invasions? I mean, if you ask me, it's like they tried to make Snow White fail harder. It's not just poor planning; it's also a full blown fiasco. Whoever greenlit this version of Snow White starring Rachel Zegler probably doesn't want to show their face at Disney right now. You see, Rachel Zegler might have been the star, but the real villain here is the creative team that thought that this would go over well, that everyone would accept it, and even probably thought that Kamala Harris would win the presidency. But here's the thing: it's not just about the box office; it's about trust. Audiences don't trust Hollywood anymore. It's plain and simple. And when you take something like Snow White, something so foundational, and give it to someone like Rachel Zegler and a small portion of the particular population in the U.S. who openly mocks the story, it confirms every suspicion people have about modern studios. It's not about telling great stories anymore. It's simply about pushing woke narratives. Okay. Now, I'm gonna be honest. Snow White was never meant to be a think piece. Okay. It was supposed to be a fairy tale. Simple as that. Joy, wonder, singing animals. But instead, we got attitude, lectures, and cringe. Okay. And now we see now that Rachel Zegler and this whole Snow White movie is going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Now, it won't be remembered for bold storytelling or creative risks, but simply put, it'll be remembered as the moment when Disney said, we don't care what made these stories special. I mean, it's basically a textbook example of how not to remake a classic. You can modernize the story without insulting the original, but what we got here was a simple film that was so tone deaf, it might as well have been a parody. Okay, and that's me just putting it gently. And let's be honest, right quick. You see, Rachel Zegler. I mean, Rachel Zegler is not helping herself at all. Every interview makes things worse. Every viral clip adds another layer to the pile of frustration that fans already feel. She's become a symbol, not of progress, but of corporate arrogance and stuff that's simply wrapped around in some sort of influencer smugness, if you will. Now, Snow White didn't need fixing at all. It needed care. It needed someone who respected it. I'd rather have a sequel than a live action remake. But instead, we got Rachel Zegler treating it like an outdated joke. And the results, one of the most insufferable movie launches in recent history. Now, as you all know, Minecraft is on its way in theaters this weekend, and I kid you not, it's probably going to destroy everything. Doesn't matter if it's bad, doesn't matter if critics hate it, but kids will see it 10 times and drag their parents along, okay? And a lot of people are saying that, it's made for kids and stuff, and so it seems it's not for grown-ups. And when the dust settles, Minecraft might rake in double what Rachel Zegler's Snow White ever dreamed of. Now, exactly how wild is that? I mean, a bunch of pixelated blocks might send Snow White into a permanent exile. So, yeah, bottom line, I mean, you simply can't slap Rachel Zegler into an iconic role like Snow White, gut the story, and expect applause. I mean, let's be real. People don't want their childhoods rewritten by people who clearly don't like the originals. They want heart. They want magic. not lectures, not apologies, not weird side characters replacing the dwarves in CGI on format. And Rachel Zegler and the Snow White Fiasco had the chance to win, to be a win and stuff. And instead, it became a cautionary tale. So, yeah, the Marvels actually beat Snow White and the box office, and they were released a long time ago. Not because it was great, but because Rachel Zegler's Snow White was much worse. And that's the level of disaster that we're talking about. I mean, it's not just bad, it's getting destroyed bad. And we've all predicted this would happen months ago, if not years ago. A franchise ending flop that proves what happens when you forget why audiences love these stories in the first place, okay? Now, do you think that Snow White starring Rachel Zegler failed because of Rachel Zegler, the studio, or both? Would the movie have worked if it just respected the source, or was it just simply doomed from the moment that Disney actually decided that the original was problematic? And remember, this Rachel Zegler film, Snow White, wasn't just a misstep; it was a cultural moment, a lesson in what not to do. The fairest in the land, more like the floppiest in the land, and no magic mirrors is going to fix that. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Be sure to smash the like button in this video if you enjoyed or shared in it. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications for future notifications, so that way you're notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.